Cakes, more than one. After hearing my speech, the audience will be able to distinguish between different cakes, but also have a fuller knowledge of their history. Did you know that the first cakes to actually be what you think of as a common cake didn't appear until the 17th century in England, over 2012? Before that, the cake was basically interchangeable with bread in that even today there are still some shady areas such as banana bread. Over the years, cakes have been used to signify celebration, though this was not the original intended purpose. While cakes have changed so drastically over thousands of years, there is still room for new innovations inspired by popular culture. Although there are literally thousands of different cakes available to make, there is still a small number of basic shapes and consistencies that have evolved to the modern cake. Now that you know some of the basics of cakes, let's go a little bit more in depth. Different cultures at different regions have developed their own forms of cake, which explains the many different kinds. The oldest cakes date back to the ancient Egyptians' highly advanced baking system, our use of ovens, the earliest ones, over 2012. The actual word cake is a derivation of kaka, an Old Norse word, over 2012. The cakes called it flatkos, meaning flat, because the four forms of cake included nuts and honey, which differentiated them from bread, but also made them flat and heavy. Stradley 2004. The Romans called their cake placenta and used it mostly as offerings to their gods. Stradley 2004. Cakes were transformed by the Victorians. Before England got a hold of the cake was literally the same as bread, only smaller and more compact, and featured nuts and honey. Stradley 2004. England developed a tubular pan to bake cakes in their advanced ovens, giving them the common rounded shape, over 2012. The wealthy Victorians started to develop elaborate cakes using icing for a highly praised celebration, often not eating the cake but just using it as a display or decoration. Other cultures started to use cakes to celebrate their culture, such as a king cake, Christmas cakes, and even a traditional Easter cake. There are a variety of cakes, not only because of different cultures, but different regions, and the ingredients and cake styles tend to be different. Yeast cake, the oldest style, is a cake made with yeast to allow the dough to rise. This is one of the factors making pastries such as stollen hard to distinguish between bread and cake, because both use yeast, giving them the same texture. Cheesecake are not in fact cakes, but custard pies made from any form of cheese, and have little flour added to them, which gives them a creamier texture, over 2012. Another popular cake is a rich butter cake, such as a pound cake. These cakes are considered more for the rich flavor rather than a lighter cake. During the 18th century, these cakes were outdated by the egg cakes. This is where air is beat into the eggs until light and fluffy, making the texture less dense than the butter cakes, such as sponge and angel cakes. The shapes of the cakes are very different for different ceremonies because the cakes are used to represent or to symbolize the occasion. The most common shape is the circle, which is used to represent a multitude of affairs. The most sensible reason for why the cake is round is because, just like bread, they shaped them into a ball using hands, and then it would be flattened while it would bake. But the theory of the cake being symbolic of the circle of life is also a popular theory, the cake literally being circular. Also, the cake being prominently featured through the stepping stones throughout life, such as birth, weddings, and graduations, over 2012. Other shapes are featured based on personal and even religious preferences. For people looking to go against the grain, you can have a traditional style, but alter it by using a square or rectangular mold or even a bump cake. Also, some cultures or holidays have their own cake, such as the king cake. That is a ring decorated with tri-colored sugar, gold, green, and purple, to represent three wise men that met Jesus on the 12th night after his birth, over 2012. Cake artistry has taken leaps in recent years, as I am sure you know, shaping cakes into pretty much anything including bunnies, toilets, humidors, featuring cigars, and even up-to-scale disc jockey tables. As long as you are willing to pay the price for an extravagant cake to show your love to someone will find a way to make your dream come possible. The development of a modern industry. Yes, cake along with bread is considered a baking industry. Like most modern-day food, cakes saw a great improvement during the early Industrial Revolution. This process to make baking soda and powder became easier through the use of machinery, Stradley 2004. Because of the revolution, Cakes were less expensive and easier to ship because of the development of railroads across the nation. Due to factories and the great idea cake mixes were invented in the 20th century. The improvement made cake more available as regular pantry items, introduced 2008. Today, on average, a person consumes 15 pounds of cake a year, and the baking industry is a $5.6 billion industry. Also, cakes have a multitude of shows devoted to them, showing how people push your ideas and boundaries on cake, introduced 2008. Though the history of cake is vague, we can conclude that it was a sweetened form of bread. The bread that was used early on and had no significant shape or meaning was transformed into elaborate designs for amazing celebrations. Because of the Industrial Revolution, cake became more widespread and is now used for special occasions or an afternoon snack. Even though we have seen cake evolve from the beginning, there is always room for improvement. So in the words of Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. That was exactly 6 minutes.